The first whisper came at dusk. Daniel was halfway down the old hiking trail when the wind stilled, leaving the pines rigid and tense as if holding their breath. Then, soft as breath against glass, he heard it. Daniel. He froze. The forest around him looked ordinary, branches clawing at the fading sky, needles carpeting the ground, a crow perched black and silent on a crooked limb. But the voice was clear. Daniel. Come closer. His name stretched between the trunks, not echoing, not carried by wind. It simply existed, inside the air, inside his head. He rubbed his ears, muttered, "Just the wind." But his throat tightened. The crow fluttered away. The silence deepened, a silence that seemed to listen back. Then came the second whisper. Different this time. Lower, closer. "We know what you did." Daniel stumbled, heart hammering. His boots scraped over roots, and he swore the pine nearest him shifted, its bark rippling as if skin, its hollow knots watching. "Don't leave." "Stay with us," he ran. Branches whipped his arms, the forest seeming to lean inward. The whisper followed, layering voices now, many voices, like a hidden crowd. When he burst into a small clearing, the sound stopped. Silence. Only his pounding breath. But the pines all around leaned toward him. Their tips bowed as though listening, waiting. Daniel didn't speak of it that night. He drove back to town in silence, hands locked too tightly on the steering wheel, headlights sweeping across empty roads. The radio stayed off. He couldn't bear sound, not music, not voices. The whisper still clung to his skull like smoke, repeating itself in a loop. "We know what you did." By the time he reached his apartment, the world had settled into its usual hum, neighbors' TVs behind thin walls, a dog barking down the block, a siren in the distance. Familiar noises. Ordinary life. He clung to them like a drowning man to driftwood. He told himself what anyone would. The forest plays tricks. Wind tunnels between trees, turning into syllables. People hear their names in static, in water, in nothing. His mind was tired, stretched thin from work. That was all. And yet, he could not stop thinking of the crow, black as an ink blot, lifting into the air just before the second voice came. He shut the curtains, locked the window. Sleep didn't come easily. When he did drift, the dream was simple. A wall of pines stretching endlessly in every direction, their branches closing above like a cathedral roof. He stood inside, very small, while the trees leaned toward him, whispering in a tongue he half recognized but couldn't translate. He woke sweating, his sheets twisted. The next morning he avoided mirrors. He didn't want to see how bloodshot his eyes looked, how pale his skin had gone. He shaved without lifting his gaze higher than his jawline. At the office, people noticed. "You good, Dan?" his coworker asked, clapping him on the back. "Fine," he said, sharper than intended. He wasn't fine. His ears rang faintly, as though still tuned to a frequency others couldn't hear. Every time the office printer groaned, every time a pen scratched too long across paper, he flinched. By Thursday, he convinced himself to return to the forest. "Face it," he told himself. "You'll see it was nothing. Just trees, just wind. A story you made up to scare yourself." The trail was quiet that day, eerily so. No joggers, no kids on bikes. Even the insects kept their distance, leaving the air unnaturally clean. He walked slower this time, each step deliberate. His boots pressed into the pine needles with muted crunches. He forced himself to hum, a thin little tune, anything to fill the silence. At the halfway point, he stopped. The same spot. The crow's branch hung above, empty now. His breath stuttered. Nothing. No whispers. No voices. Relief warmed him for the first time in days. He almost laughed. "See? Just the woods," he whispered aloud. "To prove it." And that was when the pine to his left answered. Not just the woods. The voice was wet, gummed, as if bark itself had spoken. Daniel's knees weakened. His breath rushed out in a cloud. The whisper had changed, but it knew him still. He spun, stumbling backward down the trail. His boot caught a root, and he went sprawling. Dirt filled his mouth. When he lifted his head, the nearest pine loomed tall and still. Its bark ridged and split, ordinary, harmless, but in the grain of its trunk. Daniel swore he saw grooves forming letters. Daniel. He scrambled up, tearing his palm on bark, and fled. Daniel didn't return to the trail for a week. He told himself he wouldn't, ever, But the thought gnawed. His body still carried the memory of that voice, the way the bark had spelled his name. He tried to laugh it off, bury it under work and routine, but at night, lying awake in his narrow bed, he heard it again. Not clearly, just hints, like someone whispering in the next room. Words curled around the edge of sleep. Sometimes it was his name. Sometimes it was something worse, liar. Thief. Murderer. He hadn't murdered anyone. Not literally. Still, the whispers struck deep. Too deep. On the 8th night, after one drink too many, he confided in his neighbor, Mrs. Collins. She was an old woman who spent her evenings smoking on the balcony, watching the world like it was a show staged for her alone. "I heard something out there," Daniel said, leaning against the railing. "Voices in the trees." Her face hardened. "Which trail?" "The one near Black Hollow." "Past the pines." She dragged her cigarette, exhaled slow. "You shouldn't go there." Daniel laughed weakly. "Why? You believe in haunted trees?" Her eyes didn't waver. "I believe in hungry ones." The words landed heavy. He wanted to press her, but she stubbed out her cigarette, turned inside, and closed the door without another word. He couldn't let it go. The next day, he drove to the county library, pulling dusty files and yellowed newspaper clippings no one had touched in years. Black Hollow wasn't famous, not like other haunted places, but stories existed, scattered like breadcrumbs. A hiker missing in 1983. 2 teenagers lost in 1997, never recovered. A search party volunteer found dead, eyes open, mouth full of pine needles, and always, the same rumor. The pines spoke. One clipping caught his attention. A handwritten note in the margin read, "They tell secrets. Secrets no one should know." Daniel shoved the file away, hands shaking. By evening, the whispers followed him, even outside the forest. He heard them in alleys, in stairwells, in the hum of streetlights. Faint, just enough to twist his nerves. That night, a voice rose clear in the dark of his apartment. "Daniel." "We saw you by the water." He sat up, heart lurching. His mouth went dry. "No," he whispered back. "You don't know anything." But the answer came, sharp as a nail driven into wood. "We know everything." The room seemed to shrink, the ceiling lowering, the walls pulsing. He slammed the light on. Nothing there. Silence. But he couldn't sleep. The following morning, he confronted Mrs. Collins again. She was outside, same chair, same cigarette. "You knew," he said. "About the voices." She didn't look at him. "Everyone in town knows. We just don't go there. What do they want?" His voice cracked. She turned then, ash dropping to her lap. Her eyes were wet, not from smoke. "They want what you hide. That's how they grow." Daniel swallowed hard. "But I don't have anything." Her stare lingered on him, unblinking. "Then why are they following you?" The words echoed the rest of the day. What he hides. He thought of the old dock at Willow Lake, the night 10 years ago, summer heat clinging to his skin. A friend? No, not quite a friend, more of a rival, drunk, shouting, pushing. The shove too hard, the splash, the silence afterward. He had told himself it wasn't his fault. No one ever found the body. Everyone thought the boy had run away. Daniel hadn't thought about it in years. But now the forest knew. That night the voices were louder. The trees outside his window swayed, though there was no wind. "Come back to us, Daniel. Confess to us. Feed us." He pressed his palms to his ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside. He knew what they wanted now. And he knew they wouldn't stop. The night he returned to the pines, the sky was clear, the moon sharp as a blade. He told himself he wasn't going to run anymore. He would stand there, face it, and end whatever this was. He parked his car at the trailhead and walked without hesitation. No flashlight, no humming, no denial. Just boots crunching through pine needles, heart pounding like a war drum. The trees seemed taller tonight, leaning in from all sides, their tips stabbing the stars. The air had that hollow silence again, so still that his own breaths sounded wrong, like an intruder's. Halfway down the trail, the whispers started. "Daniel." "We saw you." "At the water." He clenched his fists. "Shut up!" he shouted into the branches. His voice cracked and fell flat, swallowed whole, but the forest didn't shut up. It grew louder, hundreds of voices overlapping, some high, some guttural, all winding through his skull. He drowned, Daniel. "You left him there. The water held him, but we took what remained." His chest seized. He staggered forward, deeper into the trail, until he reached the clearing. The same place the whispers had first touched him. The trees bowed inward, their trunks bending, groaning, as though flesh instead of wood. In the moonlight, the bark shifted, knots and ridges pressing outward until faces emerged. Dozens, then hundreds. Eyes hollow, mouths open. The forest spoke as one. Confess. Daniel fell to his knees. It wasn't my fault. His throat tore with the words. He was drunk, he slipped. The faces leaned closer, mouths splitting wider. Their voices came in waves. Liar, thief of breath, killer. The ground trembled. Roots broke through the dirt, writhing like veins, coiling around his boots. He kicked, clawed, but they tightened, pulling him down. Please, he screamed. Please, I didn't mean to. The roots tightened until his bones creaked. One tree leaned lower, its bark rippling into the shape of a boy's face. Pale, wet, familiar. Daniel froze. The drowned boy's eyes opened, milky and swollen. You left me, the voice rasped, water bubbling in his throat. Daniel sobbed, shaking his head. I tried to help. No, the boy whispered. You watched. The trees groaned in unison. Bark split. Faces screamed. The forest roared with the sound of water, gurgling, rising. Daniel smelled rot, algae, the stink of old riverbeds. The ground beneath him softened to mud, sucking him lower. Roots coiled around his arms now, pulling him flat. His body thrashed, sinking. Pine needles filled his mouth, his nose. Stop. He choked. I'll tell. I'll confess, The forest shrieked back, confess to us. Daniel's lungs burned. He gasped, words spilling between sobs. I killed him. I pushed him. I left him there. I left him. Silence. For a moment, the forest stilled. The roots loosened slightly. The faces in the bark leaned back, mouths closing. Daniel coughed, dragging in a breath. Tears streaked his dirt-stained face. It's true, he whispered. It's true. The boy's face in the nearest pine blinked once, water dripping from hollow sockets. Then it smiled. Unnatural, wide, splitting bark like torn flesh. Now you belong to us. The roots surged. Daniel screamed as they pulled him into the earth, soil packing into his mouth, his nose, his eyes. His last breath filled with pine and mud and rot. Above, the pines stood still again, branches swaying gently as though in a breeze. Their bark smooth, their knots ordinary. The clearing was silent. Only the faintest whisper lingered, rippling through the needles. Daniel. 3 days later, hikers reported finding Daniel's car at the trailhead. The keys were still in the ignition. A half-empty water bottle sat in the cup holder. Beads of condensation dried into faint rings. No one found Daniel. Search teams combed the forest for a week. Dogs picked up nothing. Helicopters circled above the canopy, but the dense pines revealed no secrets. Mrs. Collins gave a short interview on the local news. Her voice was flat, her eyes hollow. He went where he shouldn't, she said. Some places don't let you back out. The cameras caught the tremor in her hand as she lit another cigarette. By autumn, the search was over. Daniel's apartment went quiet, rent unpaid, curtains drawn. His few belongings were boxed and hauled away. People moved on, but the forest didn't. On windless nights, hikers claimed they heard something strange on that trail near Black Hollow. Not animal sounds, not wind. A voice, low and urgent, slipping between the needles. Help me! Some said it was Daniel. Others said the forest only wore his voice now, adding it to the countless others it had collected. Winter came early. Snow laid a pale blanket across the trail, smoothing over the dirt and roots, hiding all signs of the living. The pines stood rigid, tall, patient, and if you stood in the clearing at dusk, where the trees leaned together like watchful giants, you could see a pattern in the bark of the largest pine, letters carved deep, not by hand. Daniel, below it, grooves shaped like a mouth, half open, waiting. That was the end of the whispering pines. Slow aftermath. Survivor testimony. Then a final silent image of Daniel absorbed into the forest. The first time Claire saw the lantern, it was swinging between the trees. Too far to belong to anyone real. She and her brother were 2 hours off trail, trying to find their way back before the last of the light bled from the sky. The forest around them thickened with shadow, each tree a wall, each root a snare. "Look," James whispered, pointing. Through the branches, a dim glow swayed back and forth, rhythmic, deliberate. A lantern. Relief cut through Claire's panic. "Someone's out here. Maybe a ranger." But the light didn't move like a hiker's. It floated smooth, level, never catching on branches or rocks. It bobbed as if carried by an invisible hand. James hissed, "Wait! Don't!" But Claire was already moving toward it, breaking through brambles, eyes fixed on that glow. It was the only certainty in a forest that wanted them lost. The lantern swayed once, twice, then retreated deeper into the woods. Claire stopped. "It wants us to follow." The words came unbidden, sliding out before she could stop herself. James grabbed her arm hard enough to hurt. His face was pale in the growing dark. "Lanterns don't want anything," he said. "But the stories do." "What stories?" He swallowed, staring at the glow. The lantern paused in the distance, hovering, waiting. The ones about never coming back. The forest pressed closer, listening. They weren't supposed to be in this part of the forest at all. The trail markers had stopped an hour ago, and the sun had slipped behind the ridge before they noticed. By the time they realized how far they'd strayed, the map on James's phone had glitched into a blank grid. No signal, no compass. "We should have turned back hours ago," James muttered, brushing needles from his jacket. Claire forced a laugh. "You worry too much. It's just trees. Worst case, we camp out." But her eyes kept drifting toward that glow in the distance, bobbing gently between the trunks. It looked almost friendly. They followed at a distance, stepping carefully over roots and through patches of damp moss. The lantern always stayed just ahead, never too far, never too close. "Could be another hiker," Claire offered. "Maybe they know the way back." James shook his head. "Nobody hikes this late. Not here." "What do you mean, not here?" His silence was heavier than words. They emerged briefly into a clearing. Moonlight caught the frost on the grass, pale and brittle. Claire spotted something wedged between rocks, a wooden post, half-rotted, carved with letters almost erased by time. She bent closer. The words were simple, but the grooves were deep. "Follow and you won't return." Her stomach clenched. "James," she whispered. But when she turned, he wasn't looking at the post. He was staring at the lantern, which had stopped at the far side of the clearing. It hung perfectly still, light pulsing faintly as though breathing. Claire whispered, "It's waiting." James's voice was hoarse. "No, it's leading." "Leading where?" He looked at her then, and in the faint glow his face was stark. Hollow, deeper. The clearing seemed to fold in on itself, trees closing like jaws. The post's warning heavy as a gravestone. They didn't follow the lantern that night. Not fully. James dragged Claire back to the clearing, away from the pulsing glow, and they spent a cold, sleepless night huddled under their jackets. When dawn finally came, the lantern was gone. Only the post remained, its carved words darker in the morning light, as if the grooves had deepened overnight. Back in town, James refused to talk about it. But Claire couldn't stop thinking of the glow, how steady it had been, how it seemed almost aware. She asked around at the diner, carefully at first. Most people deflected, laughed, or stared down into their coffee. But when she mentioned the phrase carved into the post, an older waitress stiffened. "Who told you that?" "No one, we saw it in the woods," Claire said. The woman's lips pressed thin. "You don't go past the markers?" "That's where he waits." "Who?" The woman set down a mug with a sharp clink. "The lantern man." James groaned, burying his face in his hands. "See? Just a story. Local campfire crap," but Claire leaned in. "What happens if you follow?" The waitress's eyes shifted, scanning the diner as though afraid to be overheard. Her voice dropped low. "You never stop walking. The trails twist. The forest moves. And when you finally can't keep going, you look up, and he's right there. Lantern swinging, face black as the night behind it." Claire shivered. "And then?" The woman hesitated, then whispered, "Then he takes your way home." That night, Claire dreamed of the lantern again. Only this time James wasn't beside her. She followed the light alone, each step heavier than the last. When she woke, her throat was raw, as if she'd been calling his name in her sleep. They argued for days. James wanted to forget it. Claire couldn't. "You don't understand," she hissed one evening, pacing their apartment. "It didn't feel random. It wanted us. I swear it was pulling me in." James slammed his fist against the counter. That's what it does, Claire. That's the point. That's how it gets people lost. That's why no one talks about it. Then how do you know? She shot back. His face tightened. Silence stretched. Finally he muttered, "Because Dad told me." When we were kids, her breath caught. "Dad?" James nodded, jaw clenched. He saw it too. Said it followed him for miles once, swinging just out of reach. He never went back, never wanted us to either. That's why he hated these woods. Claire's skin prickled. Their father, gone 5 years now, had never spoken of it. But she could see the truth in James's eyes. Fear, not memory. By the next weekend, Claire gave in to obsession. She drove alone to the trail, ignoring James's calls. The forest felt different in daylight, almost benign. But when the sun dipped, shadows grew long and cold. And then, without fanfare, the lantern appeared again. It swung between the trees at the same measured pace, patient, deliberate. Claire's chest tightened. "Where are you leading?" she whispered. The lantern bobbed once, as if answering. Her phone buzzed. James's name lit the screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Claire, don't!" he barked. "Don't follow it. I have to know. No, that's what it wants." "You'll never—" The call cut out. Static filled her ear, followed by something else. Something that wasn't James at all. "Come deeper, Claire." Her hand went cold. She dropped the phone. The lantern swayed ahead, waiting, and she took a step toward it. The lantern didn't flicker. Not once. It burned steady, golden, a heartbeat in the dark woods. Claire followed it past the warning post, past familiar clearings, until the forest grew wrong, too thick, too endless. The paths curled in on themselves, looping back where they shouldn't. Every time she hesitated, the lantern stopped. "Waiting. Show yourself," she whispered, her voice trembling. The glow swayed gently, as though amused. Her breath came in white clouds. She hadn't noticed the cold creeping in until now. Each exhale seemed to drain her strength, each step heavier than the last. She stumbled, grabbed a tree, and froze. The bark beneath her hand wasn't rough. It was smooth, like skin. Claire yanked her hand away. Whispers drifted through the trees. Low, overlapping, impossible to pin to a direction. Some sounded like children, some like old men. Some like James. "This way. Come closer. You'll never be lost again." Her chest tightened. "James?" she called, hating the desperation in her voice. Silence. Then, deeper. The lantern moved again. She had no choice but to follow. At last it stopped in a clearing she didn't recognize. The ground was soft, damp, littered with strange depressions. She crouched, running her hand across the soil, and realized they were footprints. Hundreds, thousands. Each pressed deep, all circling the center of the clearing. Where the lantern now hung, it dangled from nothing. Suspended mid-air, flame pulsing with something too alive to be fire, and then it shifted. The light bent, stretched, revealing a figure behind it, tall, thin, draped in blackness that swallowed the moonlight. Its face was an absence, a hollow void. Only the lantern illuminated the edges of its shape. Skeletal fingers curled around the handle. Claire's breath caught. The lantern man. He didn't move. But the whispers did, swarming, rising, deafening. She clamped her hands over her ears, but they weren't outside. They were inside, threading through her skull. "Your way home." "Give it here." Her knees buckled. "What do you mean?" The figure tilted the lantern. The ground around her seemed to tilt with it, the clearing folding inward like a funnel. "Your path. Your return. The road back. I will take it." Her stomach churned. She understood dimly, horribly. It didn't just steal people. It stole their way out. It devoured the idea of escape itself, trapping them in the woods forever. She stumbled backward. "No." The flame flared bright, and suddenly James's voice cut through the whispers. "Claire." She spun. He was there at the tree line, face pale, eyes wide. "Don't look at it. Don't answer it. Just come to me." Her throat tightened. "How did you— Run!" She lurched toward him, but the ground seemed to stretch, each step doubling the distance. The lantern man lifted the lantern higher, and the forest twisted, paths vanishing into darkness. James's voice cracked. "Claire, listen. He can only take what you give him." She froze. The whispers clawed at her. "Give it, give it. Give your way home." Her vision blurred. Her head throbbed. And then she remembered the carved post, its warning etched deep. "Follow and you won't return." She understood now. It wasn't a curse. It was a choice. Her way home was hers. Unless she surrendered it, Claire forced herself to stand. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly, directly to the void. "You can't have it," the whispers roared in fury. The flame flared white. The lantern man stepped forward, and Claire turned and ran, straight toward James, straight through the twisting dark. The clearing writhed around her, branches clawing, shadows bending. But she didn't look back, didn't falter. The whispers snapped like breaking glass. The cold broke with them, and then silence. She stumbled into James's arms, chest heaving, eyes wide. The forest behind them was still again, empty. No lantern, only night. They didn't stop running until the forest thinned and the sky bled into the pale gray of dawn. Claire's lungs burned, each step ragged, but James kept pulling her forward, murmuring hoarse encouragements until the trees finally broke. A gravel road stretched ahead, empty. Ordinary salvation. Claire collapsed at the edge, clutching the dirt as though it might vanish. James sank beside her, head bowed, silent. The birds were waking, their faint trills fragile against the weight of the night they'd survived. For a long time, neither spoke. When she finally lifted her eyes, the forest loomed behind them, innocent in daylight. The pines whispered softly in the wind, no different than any other woods. No lanterns, no voices, just trees. James broke the silence first. His voice was raw. "We were never supposed to see him." Claire swallowed hard. "Then why did he stop?" He stared at the tree line. "Because you didn't give him what he wanted." She thought of the footprints in that clearing. Hundreds of them, circling endlessly. Had all those others given in? Had they surrendered their way home, willingly or without realizing? Her stomach turned. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering though the morning was warm. A car eventually appeared on the road, its driver wide-eyed at the sight of two ragged hikers stumbling into view. They were driven back to town, offered water, blankets, questions. Claire barely spoke. She couldn't explain, not in a way anyone would believe. Later, alone in her apartment, she sat at the window long past midnight, staring at the quiet street below. Every time headlights swept past, she flinched. The glow was always too steady, too golden, too much like a lantern swinging just beyond the dark. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering to herself, "He didn't take it. He didn't take it." But the words felt brittle, because deep down, in the silence between each breath, she wondered, what if he hadn't left? What if he was only waiting, just beyond the reach of light, until she took the wrong path again? On her bedside table lay the trail map she had carried. The roads, the paths, the markers, all perfectly clear in daylight, yet one corner had warped, stained dark as though burned. A faint, curling black mark spread across the page. It wasn't there before. Claire touched it with trembling fingers. The mark was shaped like a handle, like the outline of a lantern. The paper felt warm beneath her skin. She closed her eyes. But the glow was already there, behind her lids, waiting in the dark. It began with the smell, not the crisp scent of pine, nor the damp rot of fallen leaves, but something sweet and spoiled. Like fruit left too long in the sun, seeping with rot. Elena slowed her steps along the path, her flashlight beam cutting through the fog. She'd been hiking this trail for years, early morning jogs, weekend escapes. But tonight, something was different. The trees pressed closer than usual, their trunks gnarled, shadows heavier. And the smell, thick, clinging, almost alive, pulled her off the path before she realized. That's when she saw it, a tree larger than the rest, its bark split open into a yawning hollow. The opening seemed to breathe, exhaling the sickly sweet air. Inside, something gleamed faintly like eyes. Elena's breath caught. She should have turned back, should have walked away, but the hollow whispered her name. She told herself it was the wind, just the wind through branches. But the sound was too sharp, too deliberate. Elena. Her grip tightened on the flashlight. The beam trembled across the jagged bark, catching on deep grooves, scratches etched by hands, not claws. She leaned closer. Words had been carved into the trunk, layered over each other, desperate and uneven. "Don't listen, don't look, don't enter." Her heart thudded. Elena. The whisper again, warm against her ear, though no one stood beside her. She spun, light sweeping through the fog, but the forest was empty. She backed away, pulse hammering. But the hollow seemed to follow, widening, pulling her gaze inward. She saw movement then. Not eyes, but a hand. Pale, slender, reaching from the dark as if begging to be pulled free. Her throat closed. She stumbled, dropping the flashlight. It rolled, beam tilting upward, illuminating the hand fully. It wasn't attached to an arm. It simply floated. Fingers curling in the air, skin gray and waxy, nails cracked. Elena. Her name again, but this time from the hand itself. The lips of the hollow seemed to stretch with the sound. Bark creaking like a mouth forced wide. Her scream caught in her throat, and yet she stepped closer. The days that followed blurred together. Elena avoided the woods, but the smell followed her home. It clung to her clothes, her hair, her sheets. At night, she dreamed of the hollow, dreamed of the hand curling out toward her. She told her friend Mark about it one evening over coffee. "You're just stressed," he said, stirring his drink too quickly. "Trees don't whisper names. I'm not making this up." "Then what? You think the forest is calling you?" She didn't answer. He sighed softer this time. "Look, maybe I'll come with you. Tomorrow, just to prove there's nothing there." Her stomach nodded. She didn't want him to see. She didn't want anyone to, but something deeper whispered, "Bring him." The next evening, fog rolled low as they entered the woods. Mark walked ahead, swinging his flashlight casually. "See? Normal. Just trees." The smell thickened. Elena gagged, covering her nose. "Don't you smell it?" Mark frowned. "Smell what?" Her chest tightened. "The rot." He shook his head. They reached the hollow. It was larger now, wider than she remembered. Mark frowned at it, unimpressed. "That? Just an old tree. Nothing special." But Elena saw it differently. She saw the hand again, reaching. Saw faint faces behind it, pressing from the dark, mouths opening in silent screams. "Mark," she whispered, trembling. "What?" Don't look inside," but it was too late. His light had already swung upward, directly into the hollow. Mark froze. His pupils dilated, breath stuttered. "Elena," he whispered. Her blood turned cold. He dropped the flashlight. His eyes rolled white. And then, slowly, impossibly, his body bent forward, spine cracking, limbs pulling unnaturally toward the hollow. "No." She grabbed his arm, yanking back, but the tree groaned like a living thing, its bark splitting wider. The hand inside latched onto Mark's wrist, pulling with impossible strength. "Elena," Mark rasped, though his lips barely moved. His voice was deeper, layered, not his own. She screamed, pulling harder, but the hollow swallowed him. First his arm, then his shoulder, then his entire body, dragging him into the dark. His scream cut off, and then there was silence. The hollow closed. Mark was gone. Elena fell to her knees, sobbing, nails clawing at the dirt. The forest seemed to lean closer, every tree groaning in unison. She staggered back, but the hollow pulsed with light, faint but growing. From it emerged Mark's face. Not his body, just his face stretched thin across the bark like wet paper. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Only the whisper, "Elena." She stumbled, bile rising. His eyes were wide, pleading. She turned to run, but the forest shifted. Paths looped back, branches crossed in impossible tangles. No matter which way she ran, she circled back to the hollow. The tree groaned, opening wider. More faces appeared in the bark. Men, women, children, layered, shifting, screaming silently. Their whispers overlapped, a chorus calling her name. Her mind frayed. She clamped her hands over her ears, but the voices clawed inside her skull. "Elena. Elena, join us!" The smell grew unbearable. Sweet rot filled her lungs, suffocating. Her knees buckled. She crawled toward the hollow, toward the hand now reaching again. Somewhere deep inside, the last of her will screamed no. But her body didn't listen. The whispers drowned her. The hand touched her cheek. Cold, soft, and she was gone. Days later, hikers found the trail again. They noticed the tree first, its hollow gaping wider than ever. The smell made one gag. They didn't linger. But one of them swore he heard something, a faint voice carried on the wind. Elena. He didn't say anything to the others, just walked faster, refusing to look back. Later, when the group reached town, they found scratches on their arms. Thin, shallow, as though made by bark. None of them remembered brushing against a tree, and when the man who'd heard the voice lay down to sleep that night, he dreamed of a hollow tree. Inside it, hundreds of faces pressed against the bark, and one of them whispered his name. The cabin wasn't on any map. Alex spotted it by accident, half hidden through the trees as he cut across an old logging trail. Its roof sagged under years of snow. Its windows were dark, but what struck him most was the door. It wasn't wood. It wasn't metal. It was painted entirely in a deep dark red, the kind of red that didn't come from paint at all. And when the wind shifted, he swore he heard someone knocking from the inside. Alex told himself it was abandoned, just another relic of hunters long gone. Still, something in him stirred with a mix of dread and curiosity. He stepped closer. The trees grew quieter the nearer he got. Even the insects seemed to vanish, leaving only the crunch of his boots on frosted soil. The cabin's red door glistened faintly in the dim light, as if freshly wet. He touched it with the tip of his glove. Sticky. He pulled back sharply. From inside, a soft sound answered. 3 slow knocks, muffled by wood. Knock. Knock, knock, his breath hitched. He pressed his ear to the door. Faintly, a woman's voice drifted through. Let me out. Alex staggered back, pulse pounding. The cabin loomed before him, silent, still, its windows black as blind eyes. He should have run. He knew that. But something in her tone wasn't pleading. It was patient, certain, like she already knew he'd come closer. He returned the next night. He told no one where he was going. Part of him didn't even want to admit it to himself. But the cabin pulled at him, tugging in his chest like a string wound, too tight. The moon lit the clearing silver as he approached. The red door shone darker now, the color deeper, and this time the voice came before he even touched it. You came back. His breath fogged. Who are you? Silence. Then a low laugh. Don't you remember? His skin crawled. He turned, scanning the tree line, but the forest was empty. He pressed his hand to the door. What's inside? Another laugh, softer. Nothing. Everything. Let me out and I'll show you. The knocks came again, but this time they were faster, louder. His chest tightened. He stepped back, stumbling. Why me? He whispered. The answer was immediate, like a whisper pressed against his ear. Because you opened the trail. You broke the seal. It has to be you. He froze. His stomach lurched. He hadn't told anyone, but 2 days ago he had cut across the old trail. The one locals avoided. He thought nothing of it then. Now he wondered if that single step had marked him. The next day, he tried to tell his sister, Maria. There's this cabin, he began, words tumbling out. In the woods. I heard someone's inside, Maria frowned. A squatter? You should call the rangers. No, Alex said quickly, too quickly. It's not like that. The door's red like blood, and the voice, Maria's expression hardened. Stop, you're scaring me. I'm serious, I think it wants me. She stared at him, pity in her eyes. Then don't go back. He nodded, but already knew he would. That night, he dreamed of the cabin. He dreamed the red door opened. Inside, the walls bled, liquid dripping down into pools on the floor. Faces pressed from beneath the wood, stretching, screaming silently, and in the center stood a woman in a tattered dress, her skin pale, her eyes black hollows. She smiled at him with teeth too sharp. You're late. He woke drenched in sweat. By dusk, he was already on the trail again. The cabin waited, silent, patient. This time he didn't hesitate. He pressed both palms to the door. What do you want from me? The voice was right there inside his skull. Let me out, and I'll let you go. He swallowed hard. His hands trembled. The door felt warm now, pulsing like flesh. Slowly, against every instinct, he turned the handle. The door swung inward. The stench hit him first, iron, rot, decay. He gagged, covering his nose. The floor was slick beneath his boots, the boards dark and wet. In the center of the room stood the woman from his dream. Her dress clung with stains, her hair long and matted. She smiled wider. Thank you. Alex staggered back. What are you? Her voice shifted deeper, layered with countless tones. I am what was left behind, what they tried to bury. But you opened the path. The walls pulsed. The faces in them moved, mouths opening in silent cries. Hands pushed from beneath the boards, reaching, grasping. He turned to flee, but the door was gone. Behind him stretched only more walls, more faces, endless red. The woman stepped closer, lantern light blooming in her palm, though no flame burned. Her eyes gleamed like voids. "You freed me." "Now stay," he screamed, pounding at the walls, but the wood bent, swallowed him whole. The cabin shuddered, groaned, then stilled. Outside, the door shone darker than ever. Days later, Maria went searching. When Alex didn't return her calls, she hiked the trail herself. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. She found the cabin at dusk. The red door gleamed in the fading light. Her stomach tightened, unease prickling her skin. She stepped closer, hesitating at the sticky glint of its surface. "Alex?" she called. From inside came the sound. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock. Knock. Maria froze. Her brother's voice answered, muffled. Desperate. "Maria, let me out." Her blood ran cold. She turned to run. But her hand lingered on the handle. And the voice, broken and pleading, whispered again, "Please, it's me." The trees bent in the wind, shadows stretching long. The cabin waited, silent, patient, and the red door gleamed as if freshly wet. Hook the River wasn't supposed to be silent. Mara knew this trail well. She'd fished here as a kid, swum in the deeper pools during summers. The water always rushed, gurgled, laughed over rocks. It was a sound she grew up with. But tonight, as she stepped onto the bank, the river didn't move. Its surface was flat black glass. Not a ripple, not a current. And when she bent close, she didn't see her reflection, only something else. Faces. Pale, drowned faces drifting beneath the surface, mouths open in frozen screams. She stumbled back. Her scream caught in her throat. The water didn't stir. Not even when one of the faces turned its eyes up toward her. Introduction. She didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe her? Back at her small rental cabin, she tried to sleep, but the silence of the river clung to her, louder than any roar. At dawn, she drove into town, asked around the bait shop. "You ever notice the river goes quiet?" she asked an older man behind the counter. He stiffened, eyes flicking toward the window. "Best you leave that stretch alone." "Why?" He shook his head. "Some things aren't ours to disturb." When she pressed further, his hands trembled on the counter. "They say it calls to the lonely ones. The river listens when no one else does. But it doesn't give back." Her skin prickled. "Give back what?" The man looked her dead in the eye. "The people it takes." That night she returned. She told herself it was to prove him wrong. But part of her knew better. Part of her wanted to look again. The river was waiting. Still. Silent. She stepped closer, flashlight beams slicing across the black surface. At first she saw nothing. Then the faces returned. Dozens, maybe hundreds, and one of them she recognized. Her brother. He'd drowned 10 years ago. Boating accident, they said. His body was never found. Mara had never believed that. Never accepted the empty coffin they buried. Now he was here, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing soundlessly beneath the water. "No," she whispered, knees buckling. "No, it's not you. It's not." The surface shimmered. For the first time, the river moved. Her brother's voice rose from it, clear and broken. "Mara." She staggered back. Tears blurred her vision. "You're dead." "You can't." "Mara, help me." Her flashlight slipped from her hand, clattering onto the rocks. The beam spun, cutting across the surface. More faces pressed upward, their mouths moving in unison. "Help us. Help us. Help us!" Her chest seized. She ran. The next morning she tried to explain it to her neighbor at the cabins, an old woman named Ruth. "There are faces in the river," Mara blurted. "Voices, my brothers." Ruth went pale, her mug clinking against its saucer. "You shouldn't have listened." "What do you mean?" "The silent river takes what it's offered. It holds them down there beneath the stillness. Once you hear them, you can't unhear. And if you answer..." Her voice broke. Mara leaned forward. "What happens if I answer?" Ruth's lips trembled. "Then it pulls you in too." That night Mara couldn't resist. She returned, standing on the bank where the fog curled low. The river was waiting, perfectly still. Her brother's face rose again. "Mara." She clenched her fists, tears streaking her cheeks. "What do you want from me?" His mouth moved. The sound came from the air itself, heavy and wet. "Come in." The world tilted. The bank beneath her feet softened, sucked her shoes into the mud. She stumbled, falling to her knees. The river swelled upward, not rippling but rising. Like a wall of glass, faces pressed closer, eyes rolling, mouths widening. Her brother's hand broke the surface. Dripping black water reaching for her, she froze. Her mind screamed, "Don't touch it." But her heart? Her heart leapt. "Mara," he said again, voice thick with water. "Don't leave me." She reached out, then stopped, trembling inches away. The faces shrieked in unison. The river roared without sound, waves of silence crashing through her skull. The air thickened, pressing against her chest until she couldn't breathe. She stumbled back, choking.
"No, you're not him."
Her brother's smile faltered. His eyes hollowed, black water spilling from them. His hand twisted, fingers elongating, claws sprouting. The river erupted. Black water spilling upward in impossible shapes. Arms, jaws, open mouths screaming without sound. They surged toward her. Mara turned and ran. Branches whipped her face, mud sucking at her boots. But she didn't stop. Behind her, the forest thundered with silence. Louder than any storm, she didn't dare look back. By dawn, the river was calm again. Local hikers found the bank disturbed. Footprints circling. Mud clawed deep as if someone had fought to stay out. But no one found Mara. Her car was still at the cabin. Her belongings untouched, and the silent river flowed, smooth as glass. If you stood long enough at the edge, you could see her face among the rest, mouth open, eyes wide, calling without sound. And sometimes, when the night was still enough, a voice rose from the black water. "Mara." Hikers said the cabin shouldn't exist. Deep in the forest, along a trail no map showed, it appeared only at dusk. Its windows were shuttered, roof sagging with moss. Smoke curled from the chimney, though no one ever saw anyone inside. But the strangest part, there was no door. You could circle it 100 times, run your hands over the damp wood, and never find a way in. And yet sometimes from inside, a voice would whisper, "Let me out." Elias had heard the legend since childhood. His grandfather, a logger, used to warn him, "Never follow the setting sun in these woods. That's how you find the cabin." He never believed it until now. Hunting alone one October evening, he lost the trail. His flashlight sputtered, batteries dying. As the trees closed in, he saw it, a shape through the mist. A cabin tucked between black pines. He approached, heart hammering. The cabin leaned with age, boards darkened by rot. He walked the length of it once, then twice. No door. Just 3 shuttered windows and a brick chimney dripping with moss. The air was colder here. As he stepped closer, a whisper slid from within. "Please." "I can't breathe." Elias staggered back, shotgun clutched to his chest. "Who's there?" The whisper came again, softer. "Help me." He ran. Back at town, he told no one. Who would believe it? A cabin with no door, voices in the dark. But that night he dreamed. In the dream he was back at the cabin. His grandfather stood at the window, tapping against the shutter with bleeding hands. "Elias," he croaked. "You left me." Elias jolted awake, drenched in sweat. His grandfather had been dead 10 years. By the second night, the dream returned. This time, the shutters rattled. Something inside pressed against them, stretching the wood like wet skin. A voice hissed, "Let me out." Elias told himself he wouldn't go back. But by the third night, he woke up standing at the tree line, shotgun in hand, the cabin waiting in the distance. It had called him. He circled it again, desperate. No door. No entry. His flashlight beam caught carvings on the wood, letters burned deep into the cabin walls. "Don't open." But there was nothing to open. He whispered into the boards. "Who are you?" The answer chilled him to the bone. "Your blood is mine." The shutters shivered. One cracked open. A pale hand forced its way through, fingers blackened with rot. Elias stumbled back, shotgun raised. "Stay the hell away!" The hand clawed the air, nails scraping wood. "Let me out!" the voice moaned. Elias fired. The blast echoed through the forest, but when the smoke cleared, the shutter was shut again. No hole, no damage. The cabin was whole, but the whisper was closer. Right behind him. Too late. The forest collapsed into silence. No crickets, no wind, no breath. Only the cabin looming larger, closer. Elias spun, trying to run, but the trees bent inward, funneling him back. His boots sank into the earth as if the forest itself wanted him delivered. The shutters rattled. Boards split. Dozens of pale hands punched through, fingers snapping, clawing at the air. Faces pressed against the wood from inside. Bloated, screaming silently. He recognized them. His grandfather. His uncle. The missing men from old logging accidents. All trapped, slamming against the cabin walls. They moaned as one. "Join us!" The ground beneath Elias split, roots rising to ensnare him, dragging him forward. He thrashed, screamed, fired wildly, but the cabin only drew nearer, its walls yawning open. There was a door now, a jagged hole splitting down the center. Darkness gaping wide, the hands reached out, yanking him in. His shotgun clattered to the earth. His scream was cut short. The door sealed shut, and the cabin was whole again. At dawn, hikers found the trail clear. No cabin, no footprints, no sign of Elias. Only his shotgun lay abandoned in the dirt, barrel bent as if crushed in a vise. By nightfall, the cabin returned, hidden deep in the pines. Smoke curled once more from its chimney, and if you pressed your ear to the boards, you could hear a voice whispering inside. Elias's voice. "Let me out." The forest had eyes. Nora first noticed it on the hike back from her campsite. The sun was gone, the moon thin, and shadows stretched like claws. Every few steps she felt it, the weight of a gaze pressing between her shoulder blades. She spun. Nothing. But the silence was wrong. No wind, no insects, no owls, just stillness. She quickened her pace. Branches snapped behind her, and then, through the trees, she saw it. Two glowing eyes. Not animal, not human. Watching. Nora had come to the forest to escape. Her phone was off, her office job miles behind. Just her tent, and the hush of autumn air. But now, packing in the dark, she couldn't shake the feeling she wasn't alone. She zipped her bag, flashlight trembling in her hand. "Probably just a deer," she whispered. The words fell flat. As she swung the light toward the tree line, the beam caught something tall. Very tall. A figure half hidden among the pines, still as a statue. Its face was wrong. Too pale, too long. And those eyes? They burned faintly, not reflecting light but generating it. Nora's voice cracked. "Hello?" The figure didn't move. Then came the whisper. "Dry as leaves. You shouldn't be here." She fled. Branches whipped her face. Her lungs seared, but the whisper followed her, riding the air. "You don't belong." She reached the trailhead, but the forest didn't end. The path looped back into itself, trees folding in endless circles. No, no, no. Panic surged. She hurled her flashlight. It spun, beam slicing across bark. For an instant, she saw dozens of pale figures between the trees. Thin, faceless, their glowing eyes unblinking, all watching. Her chest heaved. "What do you want?" She screamed into the dark. One voice answered, calm, patient, "To keep you." By dawn, she hadn't slept. She sat trembling beside her half-collapsed tent, knife in hand. Every time her eyes shut, she felt their gaze. The next night, she tried again to leave. No matter how far she walked, the trail bent back. The forest had no edge. She heard them move for the first time. Not steps, but a collective shifting, like an entire forest leaning closer. At the center of the path, she found a mark carved into a tree, an open eye, dripping. Her stomach turned. She touched the bark, warm, pulsing faintly like skin. A whisper coiled through the air. "We see you," she broke, then sobbing. "Why me, why me?" The reply came from all directions, voices overlapping. You looked back. On the third night, she stopped fighting. The figures surrounded her clearing, rows upon rows of watchers. Their glowing eyes floated in the dark, hundreds of them, too many to count. The tallest among them stepped forward. It was not flesh, not shadow, but something between. Its long hand rose, pointing at her. "You belong to us now." Her knife clattered from her hand. Her knees buckled. The figures pressed closer, silent, unblinking. She tried to scream, but no sound came. Her throat was locked. The tallest leaned down, face inches from hers. Its mouth opened, a vertical slit splitting the pale skin. Inside, nothing, just blackness. The whisper slid from that void. "See as we see." Her eyes burned. Her vision blurred. She clawed at her face, but it was too late. The world inverted. The forest unfolded like an endless eye, pines stretching into a spiraling pupil. She saw everything. Every watcher, every soul caught in their gaze, and she felt them see through her. Her last thought, before her mind dissolved into their silence, was that she would never look away again. Weeks later, hikers found her campsite. The tent was torn, but her belongings untouched. No body. No tracks. Only a single carving remained on the nearest pine, an open eye. When the wind blew, the carving wept sap that glistened like tears, and if you lingered too long, staring at it, the forest went quiet, silent, and watched.